Okay. Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. We are going to kick things off. I think there are still some participants that would join along the way, but yeah, I think we'll just go ahead. So thank you so much for taking the time to join this webinar on why digitalizing your task management matters. So in this webinar, we are basically going to be exploring whether it's worth it to digitalize or whether your task management or, the whole concept around digitalization is just another industry trend. So I will be focusing specifically on, what it means when I refer to task management, in the context of industry. And then I'll also take a dive into some real first-hand stories that we've encountered along the way. So yeah, we are also going to touch on the digitalization tool within that was used within those stories. So for today's presenter, that is me. My name is Jeannie Serfontein. I'm from South Africa, a town called Port Elizabeth to be specific. I am currently the Solutions Engineering Manager for a company with the name Vermaak. And more specifically, I work in the Odin Checkpoint department. So my background is industrial engineering, and over the last approximately 7 years, I've been involved in deploying digital solutions across various different industries. So as we go along with this presentation, please feel free to pop any questions that you might have in the chat. And then at the end of the presentation, I will try and answer as much as I can. So, just to kick things off, I just want to introduce my co-worker as well, Karla. You'll also see her in the meeting. So she will also be in contact afterwards with you guys. So the company we work for is called Vermaak. So Vermaak has basically been around for the last 35 years. Our headquarters are in South Africa. We're about 300 to 400 people, and we are actually a machine builder. And we have another manufacturing facility in India that's been there for also about 10 years, 11 years. And they are also about 350 to 400 people. We primarily, manufacture assembly systems for the automotive industry, but not limited to. Out of that business, we basically created a digital solution business, which I will obviously touch on a little bit today. And then we also have a digital education business, which I won't touch on today for the purpose of this meeting. But just to give you guys a background of where we come from, I'm going to show you a quick little video. So this is just to show you some of the assembly systems that we have been able to design, commission, or basically design, manufacture, assemble, and commission, and then of course commission at our customers' facilities, and the different technologies across the automotive space. Out of that, we started the digital business. We have three main product families. One is called Odin Workstation for your operator worker guidance with the help of AI tools. And then we've also got our Odin Checkpoint product. I do apologize if there's some lagging, but we've got our Odin Checkpoint product, and that is basically for our digital task management, documentation handling, production tracking, and also integrated with an IoT sensor called the Odin Raven sensor, which I'll also briefly touch on. And then our third and final product is our virtual reality product, where we basically use it to train operators. So that is just a very quick recap from our company. Now to get into today's topic. Why is it important to digitalize your task management? So I think what's really key is, regardless of the industry you're in, everyone has tasks that need to be carried out, managed, and maintained. And those tasks, yes, and I think specifically in manufacturing, we always think preventative maintenance, but there's also so much that goes along with what is needed to support your daily operations. If you're in the services industry, obviously you've got teams in the field that need to carry out tasks, and you need to make sure that it's done in a certain way. So these tasks, some examples could be daily operational checks that need to happen, in support of the daily operation. So things like your quality checks, your safety checks, obviously your maintenance tasks. I think that's key in most industries. Like I said, quality checks, making sure everything is up to par. Safety checks, making sure everything is in place. Obviously this is more crucial in more specific industries, but I think it's a big one across the board. Then our asset performance checks, making sure that everything is verified. Operational tasks. So if it's just things that need to be carried out to ensure that the cogs keep turning. And then, of course, audits. We always have tasks that need to be done for audit purposes. So when we think about that, I just want to sort of put it into a little bit of a perspective, because I think with these tasks come a lot of admin related things. And we always think admin, it's that one thing that we can put to the side and we'll get to it later. But I just to put it in perspective, organizations using paper-based processes face a 30% higher risk of operational disruption and compliance failure. That's from Gartner. And then also, employees spend nearly 20% of their time searching for information, much of it hidden in paper documents or disconnected systems. And I think that's quite a scary statistic. I think we all know the saying, time is money, right? So not to mention the hidden costs of operational downtime due to delayed reaction. I think, especially whether it's out in the field or whether it's on a factory floor, having a machine breakdown, and I tell my coworker, hey, can you please call that person? And now that he gets busy or she gets busy, and the message never gets to the right person, and it's 3 hours later and I'm still sitting with this downtime and I can't understand why no one's reacting to it. The same data being captured multiple times by different people. So this might be a familiar one. I know it's a very traditional system where we capture data on the line, whether it's on a piece of paper, whether it's on a board, and someone comes and they write it on another piece of paper, and that piece of paper gets taken to someone where they go and capture it, and they sort of double capture the same data. Reports being created manually and are sent out manually to management, printing out of job cards, running around when the auditor is coming. I think, how many times have you heard it where people say, oh, the auditor is coming and we need to prep all of our documents. And, I think, just I think the list definitely goes on and on forever. Now, I want to hear from you guys. So if you can please scan the QR code here on the top left, and it should take you to a page that looks like this. You won't see any active polls yet. I just want to hear a little bit from everyone, all the participants. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, how much time do you think you or your team lose weekly due to inefficient task tracking? So this should pop up, the questions. If it doesn't, please try and refresh your screen. If you didn't get the QR code, you can still scan it top left. It should be available. So I would really like to hear from the participants. 4 to 6 hours, wow, weekly, that is crazy. Less than 1 hour, okay. Oh, wow, more than 6 hours. Okay, see, the answers are flooding in. I'll give it another minute or so. Wow. Yeah, see, we're on 13 participants with this poll. We'll give a little bit more for people to participate in the poll. So once again, the question, how much time do you think you or your team lose weekly due to inefficient task tracking? I know that's quite a broad question. I see that the two popular answers are 1 to 3 hours and 4 to 6. 4 to 6 has taken over. And that's actually crazy if you put it into perspective. It's basically half or half to 3/4 of a whole working day, an 8-hour working day, just to put that in perspective every single week. Wow. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I see definitely the 4 to 6 hours are taking over. So that's just you know, to put it in perspective, and thank you for the honest answers on that. So I want to quickly share a story with you guys. So the first story I'm going to be sharing is about a team, and I'm going to start with one of the guys called Joe. So Joe is a technician, and he does his paper-based tasks every single day. He's obviously got a lot of tasks that needs to be carried out. Maintenance is a big one, and quality is also another big one to verify that the machinery is as it should be. And he's writing everything down on a piece of paper after he's done all his checks, and he goes to his office and he writes everything down. Okay. Then we've got Sarah over here. So Sarah basically goes and she collects all of Joe's documents and she organizes them, and then she takes them to Kenny. So when it gets to Kenny, basically Kenny then puts it in an Excel format. So he captures everything that Joe has written on paper, and then Kenny generates a report that he sends to management. Okay, so you might be wondering, okay, well, Jeannie, what's the problem with this story? And so the big thing is when we start with Joe, Joe doesn't really understand why he needs to be filling out this document, because there's sort of no communication loop, and the, you know, of what he's recording, nothing ever happens with that information that gets back to him. And so because he's doing it afterwards, he also doesn't remember everything he's done. So it becomes more of a tick box exercise where he just goes tick, tick, tick. Yes, I did this. Yes, no, I didn't do that. Yes. And so that makes it a little bit difficult, you know, in terms of keeping him accountable for what he's written down. And then Sarah. So you might be wondering, okay, but you know, what about Sarah? So with her, obviously she's collecting all of these documents that needs to be taken to Kenny. But now the thing is, that's non-value adding time transporting and organizing documentation. It's completely non-value adding time. The other problem as well is that Joe is not the only technician. There's a team of 20 technicians. And so Sarah has to go to all the Joes on the factory floor and collect all of their documents and organize all of their documents. Okay. And then Kenny. Kenny is double capturing what has already been captured in a way. So we always think, you know, the solution is to automate. And we always think that the solution is to get rid of the Joes. But Joe is not wrong for capturing the documents, but it's the problem is that double capturing, you know, the non-value adding time. And Kenny can also make mistakes. He can also make a typing error, and that might skew the reporting a little bit as well. And then from a management perspective, there's no live visibility. And like I already mentioned with Kenny, there's potentially incorrect data. And by the time management gets this, it might be too late. So let's say on average, the time it takes for Sarah to go and collect all of these documents is about 2 hours. On average for her to organize it, collect it, take it to Kenny is about 2 hours. And then for Kenny to actually go and capture it, all 20, and I'm being gracious with the time here, but for Kenny to go and capture all of those documents and then compile a report for management, let's say on average 4 hours. That's a full 8-hour day. Management is now only getting feedback of what happened in the morning 8 hours later. So another story that I would like to share with you is a group chat. You know, where and I think everyone can relate to a WhatsApp group. So I'm going to maybe try, and if you guys can follow the conversation there. Meeting in my office, and Chris is breakdown at station 20. And John, the technician, is just concerned about the chicken that Cindy wants to sell him. And everything else is being spoken about. And poor Chris is saying, guys, it's a breakdown, but no one's actually paying attention to it. And once again, Chris is like, guys, there's a breakdown for the third time. And someone says, why didn't you say anything earlier, Chris? So, and I think that happens so often where we think to ourselves, why didn't you say anything earlier? But meanwhile, everything gets lost in translation in this group chat. And by the time you read the messages, I mean, is there still time to then salvage the situation? Another story or three stories I actually want to share with you guys. So these I'll keep quite brief. The first one there is a company where they had to basically well, they fail to perform regular verification checks. Once again, we think the admin tasks are just admin tasks, but meanwhile, in this case, they fail to regularly verify and calibrate a critical tightening tool, and they had to basically recall because of 13,000 bolts that were under-torqued. The middle one is where documents were not available for a fire extinguisher. And what ended up happening, these fire extinguishers were in hospitals. And there's a document that has to always be available to make sure that the fire extinguisher was checked, and that everything is fine with it. And if the fire extinguisher does not have that document available, the kitchen staff were not allowed to cook for the hospital patients. And what ended up happening was they had to close the hospital because they couldn't provide food to their patients because of documents that were not available for fire extinguishers, which is actually crazy. The last one is the downtime, a massive downtime because the machine wasn't cleaned. It wasn't being cleaned. No one was checking. Everyone was just assuming it was being cleaned. There was no checks in place, or the one person thought that the other person did the cleaning. And what ended up happening was the machine shaft was so worn out, and they had a massive breakdown, which cost the company 1.626 million dollars. So those are just some of the stories I want to share with you guys. So now you might be wondering, well, how does digital task management actually solve these problems? So some stories I want to share with you again. So this is the London Underground train. And what happened was they had a bunch of surveys with their customer satisfaction, and they were really struggling with their customer satisfaction, and they couldn't understand why they were getting such bad reviews. And so they spent so much money to try and increase the customer satisfaction. And then one day they decided, okay, they are going to put up boards in place and to notify people of the delay between the trains. And immediately their customer satisfaction reviews went up. The other example is in Korea, there's these stoplights. And when it's red, it actually sort of ticks down because obviously a lot of people are on their phones while they're waiting at the traffic lights. And so they, to notify people when it's going to stop and when it's going to go over to green, so that obviously you can immediately go and people don't wait for each other to get off of their phones to drive. And then the other example is Uber, or if you're familiar with Bolt or any kind of service like this. So I think Uber is definitely a popular one, but knowing, even if the guy said for the last 10 minutes and there's a delay and he's 20 minutes away, at least you know. And so, it creates that feeling of at least I'm not going to be caught off guard. And that's because reducing uncertainty makes us happier. It makes us feel more at ease, and it gives us that live view of what we can expect. So digital task management is not just a list of things to do, but a system of visibility, accountability, and momentum. Okay, so we want to be able to instantly assign tasks and track the ownership. And I think that's really important, the accountability factor thereof, because if we give someone something to do, we also want sort of like a feedback loop of, has it been done? What was wrong? What did you do to fix it? Etc. Setting automated reminders and alerts for overdue items. We all have stuff that needs to happen, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, annually. And we forget we are human, it's things that go out of sight, out of mind kind of situation, because I think a lot of people, and maybe a lot of people on this call can relate as well, where we do a lot of firefighting on the day to day. So we forget about the cleaning of the machine where the shaft wears out after a while because things happen. We just forget about it. We want to view real-time progress across teams and departments. I think it's so crucial because you are just one human. You can't be everywhere all the time. And so if you are managing teams, especially if it's multi-functional teams in, let's say, different areas, let's say it's a service team, and the service teams are all over. They have to service so many of your customers. There's no way that you can check in with every single person all at once. Immediately getting notified of any problem in the field. So sort of that reaction, reacting by exception. So when there's a problem that, we normally say, especially here in South Africa, when you don't hear anything, it's good news. It's it should be good news when you don't hear anything. And so when you get that notification, you should know that, okay, now I can focus on this. This is a problem that's been popping up. And then also prioritizing those tasks accordingly. So if I've got, once again, using the example of whether it's on the shop floor, whether it's people in the field servicing customers, them giving you feedback and being able to prioritize, okay, what needs to happen first? If this person has 2 tasks or 3 tasks, how can they sort of prioritize it according to the impact and the urgency? Assessing documents, like I said, audit trails. How many times have you heard people running around because the auditors are coming, or the OEM is coming to audit us, or whatever it might be for the compliance? And then collaborating in one central searchable space and not having scattered papers or these stacks of papers, or whiteboards that are being written on, but nothing gets recorded and we've got no historical data. So now I want to ask you a second question. So this will pop up again on the left-hand side. So if you just open your phone again, if you could improve one aspect of your task management system, what would it be? So we've got centralized or live visibility, including guided standard operating procedures, SOPs, reporting by exception. So like I said, reporting when something's wrong, data and reporting, and then ensuring staff accountability. Okay, so if you think of your current task management system, what would you improve on, even if it's your current, even if it's paper-based, whatever it might be? How do you think you could improve that? Okay, I see a lot of people says including guided standard operating procedures, live visibility for sure. Yeah, I see the guided SOPs are definitely the front runner right now. Live visibility has taken over. Yeah, see, there's 8 participants so far. I'll give it a little bit more time. So yeah, I would really love to hear from you guys. What would you improve, from your current task management system? What's that one thing that you would love to improve? Live visibility, yeah. So I can definitely see a lot of you guys don't want to hear from Joe 8 hours later. Okay. Cool. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. So yeah, I can definitely see the live visibility and including guided SOPs are the 2 big ones. And that's usually the 2 that lacks with paper-based systems. So what I now want to share with you guys is how going digital with task management assisted one of our customers to actually reduce their costs. So this customer is basically a large automotive parts supplier, and basically everything was managed on Excel, paper, WhatsApp all the WhatsApp groups and word of shout, as we would like to call it, where the one just shouts from the one side of the factory to the other. And basically the goal was to move away from, like I said, the traditional paper-based tasks and maintenance management processes, and then to just digitalize all the scheduled tasks, including the quality, safety, all of the other things that need to happen, and the data collected from downtime and visibility of the task status. Okay. So basically, the first way in which this customer was able to reduce costs was through enabling quicker reaction time. So their downtime was reduced by an average of 3.5 hours a month. And that was through going digital, being able to raise alerts quicker to the right people so that the right people could react. And they, just by doing that, increased their or decrease their downtime by 3.5 hours on average. So if you look at that in terms of a calculation, their daily production is 9,000 units per day, and their total running time per day was 21 and a half hours, and their production rate was obviously then 419 units per hour. And their average selling price is about $8 a unit. So the cost of their downtime is obviously the downtime of reduction times the production rate times the selling price. And we saw that that was a total of $11,000, almost $12,000. And that we basically said, okay, well, let's take a conservative factor and we just work on 30%. So even if we can just save 30% of that, that's already $3,500 saving per month. Okay, just by increasing the reaction time. Okay. The second way is removing the administration required by a paper-based system. Like I said, we always think admin is just there, we'll get it done. It's not that big of a deal. I think a lot of you guys who said the 4 to 6 hours, you really see how it's affecting your day-to-day. But in terms of this customer, so they basically transitioning to the automated and paperless maintenance has saved them 2 days for 2 supervisors to basically take that stack of papers and capture it. So the Kennys of the world, and that was 28 hours saved a month. And let's say at a labor rate of $15 per hour, that's $420 saved a month. Then let's just think about the job card printing and handling, with Sarah running around. On average, that's 338 job cards printed per month that this customer did. That was 10 minutes for managing and handling the job cards. So let's say 56.33 hours saved a month. Also times the labor rate of $15 an hour, 840 saved a month. Okay. Then the manual report compilation. So let's say they just to create, poor Kenny sitting there and just creating reports. So for this customer, we saved about 1 day every single month that the person did not have to manually create the reports. And that was, let's say, also at a labor rate of $15 an hour, $120 saved per month. So that is an additional, on top of the $3,500, that's an additional $1,380 saved a month. Now, by increasing the live visibility, so McKinsey and Company, so they basically said, well, just by sort of automating this task visibility and like the processes can boost operational efficiency by 15 to 30%. So we said, okay, well, let's think about the task accountability and transparency, the real-time visibility, the intuitive guidance. So we spoke about that as well, the SOPs, giving people instructions on how to do the job, and then getting instant access to information. So allowing them, if I need a document on this machine, to get quick access to that. If we were able to we enabled those 3 sort of features, and by doing that, if you think about, they've got 20 technicians and supervisors, so 20 people in total, and the potential saving of that is 150 hours a month also at a labor rate of $15 an hour, which gave a monthly cost of $45,000. So if we go according to this statistic of, saving operational efficiency by 15 to 30%, and we just take a 10% of that, and, we also, once again, a conservative factor, and we just have an efficiency boost of 10%, that already brings us to another $4,500 a month. Then enabling faster access to critical information. So for maintenance, so once again, if let's say an alert, so an alert is like the equivalent of a job card, letting you know when there's a problem. And then also providing access to vital documentation, obviously reducing the search during breakdowns. So if we take the average amount of alerts for this customer, which was 81, and we take a quarter thereof, so let's say 20 alerts, and they basically, to resolve those alerts, just giving them faster access to that. Let's say we reduced 9 minutes for just a quarter of those problems that were raised. That's a monthly saving of the 20 alerts times 9 minutes each, saving for the search time. That's 3 hours a month. And the downtime cost per hour would then be $1,200 per hour. Therefore, another potential saving of $3,600. And that's just by saying to the guys, okay, well, if you have these alerts, you want information on the machine to be able to resolve those alerts. Here's quick access to those documents, or making those documents available so someone doesn't have to run to the file cabinet, wherever it might be stored in your facility, and search through all the documents. It's already organized. Just by enabling that, saving 9 minutes per problem, if we take a quarter of the problems, it's actually crazy if you think about it, $3,600. And then obviously, like we already spoke about, the faster access to, digitized health and safety compliance as well, and audit readiness in general. And then obviously there's an environmental impact as well. So if we just look at going paperless and the energy efficiency, that's another $200 that this customer saved just by not having to print all of these documents. So now you might be wondering, okay, well, what system did they use to actually do this? And this is a system called Odin Checkpoint. And you'll see on the screen, it says a smarter way to get the basics right. And that is really what it is. It's not an overcomplicated system. It's to get the smart, or the basics just done in a much more efficient way. So it's not completely changing the process or anything like that. There's sort of 4 main aspects to the architecture, I would say. So it's a cloud-based application which made it really easy for this customer to deploy it, because they didn't need any special servers or networks or anything like that. They just needed internet access for it. On the desktop web app side, like to my right, on the screen, that was basically it's used for all the planning of all the tasks that needs to happen, the setting up and the reporting and the management thereof. Then on the left, there's the mobile application. So that was used by the technicians and the supervisors in the field to complete their tasks and give feedback as they are doing so. And then there's another part to our to Odin Checkpoint, which is called Odin Raven, which I'll touch on a little bit more. It's a vibration sensor used for asset condition monitoring. So just to be a little bit more specific on what is involved with the application that was used. So there's scheduled tasks and the alert system. Then there's a production tracking, but in this case, I'm not going to focus too much time on that. Then there's a documentation portal, which allows, it's like your digital filing cabinet. There's dashboards and notifications, of course, and a feature called Rapid Records. And then integrated with that is the Raven sensor used for the condition monitoring. So being able to place it on an asset, monitor the utilization. And so let's say there's a scheduled task that needs to happen every 100 running hours, to say there's 100 running hours on this machine. Please schedule a cleaning tasks or something like that. Then also raising alerts when anomalies are detected. So condition monitoring, as soon as you detect something out, or the Raven detects something out of the norm, being able to raise alerts to the alert system, and then machine cycle counts where it allows for it. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm not going to focus too much on the Odin Raven. I'm going to be focusing more on the scheduled tasks and the alert system, as well as the documentation portal, because that's how this customer got to the ROI that they did. Okay, so the task management or the planned tasks, so I'm sure you're familiar with this. You've seen this before, the paper-based, tick box exercise where everything gets filled out. Poor Joe sitting there. Yes, I changed the oil in the filter and I did all that. I'm sure this looks familiar to quite a few of you. Or if you're in construction, having to do certain checks as well, or workplace safety inspection, whatever those scheduled tasks might be. Okay, so what this customer then used was what we call the task management system for scheduled tasks. So the technicians were able to every single day log on to this app. Once again, cloud-based application. They see, okay, I've got 3 scheduled tasks. So let's say Yaku, and he's got 3 steps to complete, and he clicks on the first one. And now as he's actually going to complete his task, he also gets a guided standard operating procedure on how to do it. And at the end of every single SOP, there's like some sort of feedback that he needs to give. So now Yaku can't go back to his old ways and fill on a piece of paper. He gives you the sort of the metrics of what he's capturing, or the feedback that he needs to give you as he's doing it. And we can also embed videos. So in these SOPs, the customer was able to put as much or as little information as they preferred. Because obviously for some of the tasks, they wanted less information. For some of them, they wanted more information. So if you want to add another video, you are more than welcome to. In this case, this is recording the distances that the check is being done. So the technician is actually watching that video, and then the technician follows. And I'm just going to fast forward a little bit, but the technician follows the video and watches all of it and then captures it. And then every time that the technician gives feedback, he says, Yaku says, I acknowledge and proceed. And so immediately it's also that stamp of, accountability, because he's saying he did this check now. And then the last step in this specific check is checking the doorway pad thickness. So another measurement that needs to be completed. Also, there's word instructions, there's a picture, there's a video instruction. So once again, Yaku is going to watch this video and then actually do it. I don't think you guys would really necessarily like to watch this video. So I'm just going to fast forward it again. And now what I want to show you is, what if there's a problem? So it's all good and well filling in these things, but what if there's a problem? So now Yaku watched the video, he's putting in 9 millimeters. And now he's going to say acknowledge and proceed, and immediately says, oops, 9 mil is outside of the acceptable range. So now what the system does is, when these tasks were set up, this customer specified the ranges of what things need to be between. So Yaku, the technician, doesn't have to worry about filling in the correct or what it should be between. The system knows that. So it's like if you think about getting messages on a WhatsApp group, that one person that has to go through all those messages to check, is this actually correct? So you're giving me a temperature reading, or you're giving me a measurement of some sort, or whatever it might be. And I now have to go and check, are they actually between what they should be? Let me remember, should it be between this and this? Or, so now the system checks for that. You don't have to. And so immediately checkpoint raised an alert and said it's outside of the acceptable range, and it raises what is basically the equivalent of a job card. And you can add a picture to prove, okay, this was actually 9 mil, or let's say this is a machine breakdown, whatever it might be. You can add pictures for some context, and then that can be saved. All of this information was pulled through because the problem happened during a scheduled task. So it pulled through that information already to save some time. Then the person said next, and now all that he has to do is to go and select the category and the severity of the breakdown. So he has to give you more or less of an idea. Okay, can I still continue the operation, and what is the severity? How bad is this? You know, so I can prioritize. Now the rest of the fields were not compulsory. It's definitely not compulsory, because let's just think about it. If this was an operator or someone in the field raising this problem, they might not know who to assign it to. So this is not compulsory at all. But if you do assign it to someone, you have to add a due date, once again, for the accountability factor. And in this case, they just assigned it to Yaku again. He swipes to raise the alert. And now the beauty of it is he can now resume with his job. So no longer does the message get lost in translation. I'm telling Karla, and Karla has to tell Yaku, and Yaku has to tell whoever. I raise the alert immediately so that the right people can get the notification. So normally what happens, just to once again put this in perspective, is the one person shows the other. That's normally what we refer to as on the job training, right? And when he gets to a point afterwards where he has to go now, okay, are you good? I don't know so well. Whereas on the other side, he sees the instructions coming up on his mobile phone. This could be a tablet as well. And he gives you feedback as he's doing his checks. And from a management perspective, you have an holistic view, because once again, there's not just one Joe, there's not just one Yaku, there's multiple people that needs to carry out tasks. So from a management point of view, you have basically the eyes of the eagle, where you can see who's been assigned what's been completed, what still needs to be done, etc. So that brings me to the unplanned incidents, you know, the fire hazards. Normally it's the WhatsApp messages that get sent, excuse me, or the communication, the word of shout, as I mentioned before. So the alerts, now you've seen basically the first way in which we raise an alert is through the scheduled task that was raised. But so that's the first way. The second way in which an alert can be raised is there's this button at the bottom of the screen, which could be used at any given point in time. So if you walk past any problem, whether you are a technician, a cleaner, a CEO, you are able to raise an alert, and the person that's responsible for that area gets a WhatsApp. Okay. So, and then the other way is through the Raven Center. But like I said, for the purpose of this webinar, I'm not going to focus on that. If you would like more information, I will make our details available afterwards so you can reach out. Now, the process flow is basically documenting the alert, right? So like you saw in the previous video, capturing what's the problem, adding that video, and as soon or that photo, and as soon as you save it, the supervisor of the area or responsible for that customer or that location gets a WhatsApp notification to say an alert has been raised. Okay, now that person can go to the Kanban board. They can see in this first column, it's all unassigned tasks. So they are then able to see, okay, let me quickly go and assign it. And as soon as they assign it and they give that due date, it goes to the middle column. Okay, so the assigned column. But like I said, it has to have a due date for that accountability. And then once it's been resolved by whoever it's been assigned to, they would have to put in the information like what was wrong, what was the component that broke, how long did it take you to fix it, what did you do to fix it? And that information is obviously stored for all continuous improvement reasons. So you have the history, no longer gets missed in a WhatsApp group. So poor Chris, the technician that was raising these alerts on that WhatsApp group, and no one was, you know, after the third time, and I don't know how many people have the time to raise an alert 3 times on a WhatsApp group, but after the third time, they said, why didn't you say anything earlier? So now Chris can just go and he can raise the alert on this, and it will immediately go to the supervisor and immediately show up on this Kanban board. Once again, the referring to the case study I spoke of earlier, that customers saved 3.5 hours every single month on average by doing this. Then the cloud capture, the documentation portal. This is your digital filing cabinet. So how can we enable people to get faster access to documents? And so what we do is you basically on the cloud-based application, you go and store documents to a location. Or like it could be, let's say you have a manufacturing section and you've got a quality section, and however you want to basically set up your areas. And then obviously your asset. So an asset can be any machine or piece of equipment that you want information on. So what happens is you store the documents to those specific locations or to the assets, and then you generate a QR code from Odin Checkpoint, and you physically go and put it in that area, or you physically put it on that asset. Now what happens is if I'm the technician that's there 2 o'clock in the morning, there's a breakdown, there's an alert, and I don't want to spend on average 9 minutes to go and search for documents. I just have to scan that QR code and I get access to all the information that was made available or that was stored to that location or that asset. And if the maintenance is being done on that asset, you can also get a quick overview of that. So the last little video I want to show you is basically this one, where also a fire extinguisher example. I don't know if the sound can share or is shared, but it's fine. It's just a little background music. So basically, this is just showing you a scheduled task that was done for this, or set up for this fire extinguisher. And it's giving the technician the inspection. So let's say this is the technician that has to go, and he's got 10 customers that needs to be serviced, whatever it might be. This is obviously just an example of a fire extinguisher, but it could be air cons that needs to be serviced. That is as how he's doing his tasks. He's giving you feedback as he's going along. So and you can see he's entering, okay, this is the height of where it should be, giving you feedback on, you can add a picture as proof that that is what the measurement is. So also raising an alert because that's a problem. It's not as high as it should be. And he's raising the alert, and he continues then with his scheduled task. But now the supervisor in charge for this area would get a WhatsApp immediately to let them know there's a problem, and that person can go and assign it. And now he's also just taking another photo. Sorry, I think it's lagging a bit on my side. So the technician is basically just filling out all the information, and then you can see the documentation portal. So now he needs to scan to see what documents are available. So this is the digital filing cabinet, and he can see all the documents that were saved to this specific asset. But once again, this could be anything. And now he's raised, or he finalized his check that he completed. I think one thing I just failed to mention is with the when the WhatsApp gets sent, it's not only sent to the supervisor. As soon as it's assigned to someone, that person gets a WhatsApp to let them know, hey, there's an alert that's been assigned to you. And the other thing is, if it's overdue, they will also get reminders that these problems are overdue. So then how do you start? How do you go from here? So if this looks interesting to you and you want to be like the customer I shared with you, where do you start? So basically, when you go through this whole digital journey, there's obviously the start of it, which is eliminating the paperwork. And, people ask you for all of your information. It gets put onto a system. And then you sort of start automating the processes and streamlining it a bit for that real-time visibility and the reporting by exception. And what happens most of the time is when it gets to transforming your people, transforming your business, that's when it falls flat, because what a lot of times happen is people go in full force. They go through the first 4 steps for the whole factory. But then when it gets to, okay, is this actually going to add value? That's where it falls flat. And that's normally where the digital solution provider steps out. And we don't believe in that. From Odin Checkpoint and GenderMark's point of view, we believe in doing this process multiple times. And starting simple, starting in a pilot area, starting with whether it's 1 asset or 25 assets at most, and you sort of scale from there. And we go through the whole process and we prove the value add, so you can see a quick return on investment. And we sort of go from there and deploy and scale as our customers get more and more comfortable with it. Because it is, unfortunately, it is change. We don't like change as humans. And so there's no question about whether we have the right technology. But what the question is about is, the human aspect is, how can we actually assist humans to change and to accept it better? And what we've seen the most successful case studies with, starting small, building that value add, seeing, okay, this works for this area, let's scale and scale and scale. And then until the customers get to a full plant or a full, let's say, service team scaling point, and they accept that. So the last question I want to ask you, if you go back to the QR code, is what's stopping you or your team from fully digitalizing your task management? Is it the cost of the software tools, the change resistance, the lack of time to set it up, already using too many tools, or you just don't know where to start? So if you're looking for the QR code, it's top left. Change resistance for sure. Any other participants? There we go. Not sure where to start. Already using too many tools. Yeah, we get that quite a lot, where a lot of people say they've got so many different tools, and each for, this one for documentation and this one for maintenance, but the maintenance is still paper-based. And yeah, we're definitely familiar with that. Yeah, I see change resistance is definitely the popular answer. I'll give it another few seconds. See, we've got 6 participants in the poll so far. I would really like to hear from you guys if there's more people that can join in the polls. Okay. Cost of software tools for sure. Okay. I want to ask you guys if there's any questions. Okay, I see the change resistance is definitely a big one. If there's any questions, please send it to us in the chat. We will keep an eye on the chat quickly if you guys have any questions. If it's something you do not want to ask right now, but it's something that's you've been wondering about, please feel free to ask afterwards. Okay, I see. Hi, Jeannie and Karla. Okay, hi, Jeannie and Karla. Thanks for sharing the insights for the Odin checkpoint and Raven. It would be highly appreciated if you can share the, yeah, okay, we'll try, yeah, we can share the presentation afterwards. If you have any requirements you would like to explore, yeah. So we have our colleagues from India. We've also got them in the chat, or myself and Karla. Please feel free if you guys want to reach out if you have any questions, if you want to explore this further, you want more information on the Raven. Karla put our details in here. I would like to know, is it connected with AI and machine learning? So yes, the Odin Raven specifically has definitely machine learning capabilities. I think that's a whole conversation in itself to explain how that is included. But yeah, for raising the alerts, being able to know what the state of the machine is, all of that, we use AI and machine learning in that regard. Yeah, so just to answer your question, Vishal. Okay, I'll give another question. Okay, so we also use my mine and Karla's business cards. So please feel free to scan it, connect with us on LinkedIn, and we are really happy to have any further discussions. Vishal, if you would like to have a further discussion, I think we can definitely interact with you to set that up. Yeah. Cool. I see we've got 2 minutes left. So yeah, thank you guys. I really want to thank you for taking the time to join this webinar. We will be sharing a link just to get your feedback on the webinar. We want to know from you whether you found this helpful and whether there's other topics you would like for us to explore. I think what's really key is we always want to overcomplicate things when we think about Industry 4.0. And I think the biggest message today is it doesn't have to be an overcomplicated system that, you know, costs you millions and you don't get any value. We want it to be cost effective and see quick return on investment. So yeah, please feel free to reach out with us, and thank you. So.